Hello, and welcome to Wrestling with Poetry, Kalamazoo, Michigan's premier wrestling and poetry podcast. This week, poet Joshua Edwards, and our topic, Paths to Glory. How does one become a pro wrestler? First and foremost, we hear from poet Joshua Edwards. Joshua Edwards was born on Galveston Island and lives with his family in New York City and West Texas. He's the author of The Double Lamp of Solitude, Architecture for Travelers, The Exhausted Dream, and several other books. And he translated Maria Baranda's Ficticia and co-translated Lao Yang's Pea Poems. He directs Canarium Books and teaches at Columbia University and the Pratt Institute.
This poem is called The Lamp of Style, and it's my retelling of the story which Raymond Queneau tells many different times in many different ways in his wonderful book, Exercises in Style. And I chose it because I feel like it gets at some of the same things that wrestling does. The Lamp of Style. At noon, it was exactly noon, rush hour, and I was on a bus traveling along the S route with a multitude of strangers when a man younger than me and with a longer neck confronted another passenger, saying that they had repeatedly bumped into him. The accuser's heart was darkened by anger. His eyes were embers set deep in the shade of a felt hat, held in place by a cord. The accused met his gaze with a terribly icy stare, which did indeed push the aggrieved headlong into an empty seat. City living is no picnic, I thought. To live is to suffer. Later that day, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I again saw the man in the hat. A friend of his was condemning his coat for being less than well-buttoned. "Hey," I yelled, "life is wonderful."
Thank you, Josh. That was fantastic and fascinating. We have no emails this week, but if you ever have a poetry or wrestling question, you can ask us here at wrestlingwithpoetry@gmail.com. That's wrestlingwithpoetry, one word, @gmail.com. And I will do my best to answer your questions or address your concerns. That's wrestlingwithpoetry@gmail.com. This week's topic, how to become a wrestler, a pro wrestler. So you want to become a pro wrestler. That makes sense if you like fighting, and if you are athletic, and if you have kind of an outrageous personality. Now, what is the first step? First step, take a beginner class in pro wrestling. Here in Michigan, in the Detroit area, there is a place called House of Truth Wrestling School, which is well regarded. Truth Martini is the head of House of Truth, so you understand where the name comes from. Michigan people, there is also Pure Pro Wrestling in Goodrich, Michigan, which is also in the Detroit area. If you're in Kalamazoo and can't leave but still want to wrestle, what do? I'd ask the people at Independence Pro Wrestling. They're fairly local. They usually do stuff in the Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids, and Lansing area. Go to one of their matches and find out firsthand where they train and see if you could get connected that way. While you are finding the right place, consider this. Physical ability and personality. This is what the pros say it takes to make it. You need fantastic physical ability and the sort of personality that makes everybody look at you when you enter the room. And what always helps with this? Yoga. You always want to know what's going on in your body and check in with your thoughts. In addition to yoga, you should take more classes, connect with others, realize some wrestlers started in different areas of the martial arts, like jiu-jitsu. It's true, every pro wrestler studied somewhere to learn their moves and their special character nuance. It's not something that you could just intuit your way through. You really have to learn how things are done. Also realize that schools are somewhat connected to the industry. For example, many pro wrestlers have their own wrestling schools, and who better to learn from than someone who has reached the heights? Pro wrestlers who have their own wrestling schools. For example, Colby Lopez, commonly known as Seth Rollins, is one of the owners of Black and Brave Wrestling Academy, which is in Davenport, Iowa. I'm not endorsing it, I'm just saying it's there. Wrestler Booker T has a wrestling school in Houston, Texas called Reality of Wrestling. This covers a lot of the business angle, folks. The Fighting Santino brothers have Santino Academy in Los Angeles, California. Danny Davis founded Ohio Valley Wrestling in Louisville, Kentucky, which he still runs. Ohio Valley Wrestling is considered a talent development area for total nonstop action wrestling promotions. John Cena, Randy Orton, and Dan Bautista trained there before entering the WWE. Probably each of these wrestling schools has their own little formula for training, but the fundamentals to be learned if you are an absolute tabula rasa are the following. Number 1, stretching. You gotta stretch. You gotta stretch your neck and your shoulders and your back and your legs. Stretching prevents injuries. Now I mentioned yoga. Former wrestler DDP, Diamond Dallas Page, is a wrestler. He's not only a fan of yoga, but he has his own yoga studio. So consider that. Also, you can develop yourself with yoga outside of, like, suppose you're living in a very small town. Chances are they've got a yoga studio. They might not have a wrestling one, but it's a place to start. And you really do need your muscles stretched out so they don't drastically tear. Now, the second element, chances are, in your wrestling program, there will also be a calisthenics component. These are exercises that get your heart rate up. Calisthenics include push-ups, squats, cardiovascular exercises specific to wrestlers, like bridges, which prepare you for your future suplexes. You will want to build endurance and lung capacity and strength so that you can endure in the ring. You will learn the etiquette of wrestling. Puking on the mat is a big fat mistake. If you are nauseous, get out of the class, go to the hallway, find a sink or a garbage can and puke there. Never puke on the mat. It will never be forgotten, and therefore it will never be forgiven. Another thing you will learn in wrestling school is tumbling, the 3/4 roll, the somersault, etc. This is how you recover from a fall. You will be assessed in wrestling school as to your coachability. Can you understand what is being told to you, and can you respond and synthesize the improvement expected? More advanced areas are holds and throws, aerial moves, and combinations of all of these things. Remember, wrestling is a performance. It is acting as much as grappling. Once you get in the ring, remember, high spirits can lead to slapping, pushing, and throwing, and you're going to need to learn how to take a slap and control your temper. You do your best to make a favorable impression. Consider this, it's exhausting to work with difficult and unreliable people. So when you're going to school, realize you got to be sharp. You don't have to kiss ass, but listen and remember, injury is inevitable. The instructors are former wrestlers. They've seen and done their fair share, and sometimes the consequences of injury involve all-day pain. I'll let you put that together. But basically, if your teachers are people who are in pain all the time, just consider how you want to interact with them. I don't want to tell you what to do, and I have not been to wrestling school. I've just been sort of culling this information from the web, and also what I know from different schools that I've been at, which don't teach wrestling, but I am familiar with yoga, and I am familiar with dance class, and I am familiar with people who are in pain every second of their life, and you really do have to deal with them in a way. You gotta consider your approach, is what I'm saying. Note, beginner classes typically don't culminate in wrestling in the circled square. Some training systems take 90 days to 6 months before you even get into the ring. This is because you will be developing trust with the other wrestlers and Well, that's the main thing. At which point, you will learn how do you fall in the ring? How do you take a back bump? Experienced people say that it is alarming, and you will need to get used to it, falling dead on your back. Expect to get chopped. That's another pro said that. So, I hope I told you about the things to expect in beginning wrestling school. I can't say that you're going to be a pro if you do all of these things because there's always the X factor, which is likability. You'll need to be photogenic and whatnot. But you might as well try, I'd say, especially if your passion is in that direction. If anyone out there has taken a pro wrestling class and wants to talk about it, what it was like, what you could expect, if I got everything wrong, well, just email us at wrestlingwithpoetry@gmail.com. Some of my sources for this information are www.bodyslam.net, the 2020 What You Should Know About Becoming a Professional Wrestler, the YouTube channel Until We Make It, wrestlers who make their own school, that's on the sportster.com. Anyway, events. Poetry Open Mic at Satellite Records, Thursday, September 7th, 2023. 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. There will be not just poetry, but an open mic at Satellite Records. It does favor poetry and song. That will be at 808 Southwest Nedge Avenue in beautiful Kalamazoo, Michigan, 49008. Wrestling events. Independence Pro Wrestling, September 16th. That's a Saturday. Super Smash Live Pro Wrestling at Territorial Brewing. That's 1600 Avenue A in Springfield, Michigan. That's 49037. The event, I believe the doors open at 6 and the event lasts until 8:30 p.m. And that's all we got for today, Labor Day. Thank you, Josh, for being on the program and sharing your great work. Thank you, everyone who listened. You will hear back from me in 7 days.